You work in banking by day, but just rattled off 3 straight top 3 finishes at the Ohio Mid-Am,
That,
including a win by 5 shots. How do you hold a 9 to 5 and play high-level golf?
good question. I think first and foremost, it comes from, I want to do it. None of that would happen without me having a passion for continue to play competitive golf, look forward to something outside of my job, outside of, my marriage and things that me and my wife like to do together. It's still something that brings me a lot of joy. It's very hard to explain. I've tried to explain it to like my in-laws. My father-in-law will ask me, he'll say, "Hey, like, why are you playing this stuff?" And I'm like, well, like, it's really not that easy to explain. It's more, because it's not inexpensive. It's not, it's definitely time consuming, and it requires a decent amount of travel. So sometimes I'm away from home for, back weeks, or just depending on how the schedule falls. But it really comes from a place of, you know, chasing something that probably, never really will be reached, but at the same time keeps me looking forward to getting a little bit better. And so that translates into, how do you do that? I think there's a very big difference between competitive golf and just being a really good golfer. I think you can be both of those, but it's really hard to play good golf when you're in a competitive setting. So I get more joy out of that than, going to play at my club on the weekend. We have a really good group of guys. So of, you know, there's probably 30 people in this group chat, and there's probably 3 to 4 tee times every Saturday, Sunday from May to September. And I joke about it all the time, but I'm probably less focused than that and play worse than that than I go play in, some of these Mid-Am events or a USGA event, because it's not that it doesn't mean anything to me. It's just, it's harder to stay engaged when, your buddies are joking around, or, we're getting a drink at the turn, and it's, just a casual Saturday and we're enjoying the weather. So, um, I try to reserve as much of my focus to those competitive events because it's hard to stay locked in 100% of the time. But thankfully, I've played some good golf over the last couple of years. Yeah, so Iowa Mid-Am's been good to me, and I think, jumping into it, the first one I played in was, so I'm 28 years old. It's usually held in August in Ohio, and you have to be 25 at the time of the event. So I turned 25 in October, so I couldn't play it my first year that I felt like I was, getting into the Mid-Am scene, which was kind of disappointing, but at the same time, it just is what it is. I couldn't do anything about it. And then the following year, I started to play a few events. It's at a course called Pinnacle up in Columbus. Never saw it. One time in my life, showed up. It was a little bit rainy, and just kind of playing pretty good golf, I'd say. And I come to the last day, I'm in the last group, and it was a really foundational experience for me, I'd say. I played with the champion, and I played with Bill Williamson, who's a good mentor of mine here, and just lost by one stroke, birdied the last hole, playing partner part it, and kind of like he told me to remember what it felt like to kind of be there on the back nine and have the shots, and be so close to winning something. And I didn't really think anything of it at the time. It was a good challenge, self-reflected thing to go for afterwards. But, you know, come the following year, it happened to be at our home course, Coldstream Country Club down here in Cincinnati, and same situation, kind of was back by two, but this time I was in the second to last group, and kind of came into that day and just said, "Hey, it's an opposite wind. You play here all the time. It's firm." Just told myself to go birdie the first hole. Just birdie the first hole, birdie the first hole. And that's all I was focused on. I hit it 10 feet, made the putt. And, I kind of woke up on 10T and was up by five. So it was really cool to see that happen. And, touching on Mid-Am golf and, playing golf, a lot of these events are great because they're usually 3 days. It's usually 18 holes a day. You're rarely going to find a 36-hole day. And with that, you can kind of sneak in a half day of work beforehand or after, depending on your tee time. So I think that's what makes it less stressful for me, is just kind of, utilizing my time to my advantage, and, jumping into these events and kind of turning my brain off from work and going straight to how do I play the best round of golf today. So that was fun to win one. It was the first time I felt like, you know, and I've known Hayden for a while, but I've never really won anything. I would say I've been very competitive my whole college career. I've made a couple, now 3 USGA events, but I've never really won anything like that. So it was cool to, have that first win, and then it just opens up the possibilities of what's going forward.
Well, talking about kind of your competitive history, if the record is correct, you were playing volleyball in freshman or as a freshman in high school,
I was,
and
yes.
then 3 years later, you're shooting school records at the state championship. Talk to me about like that's a wide berth of different athletic and competitive experience. What's kind of going on there that's setting the foundation for college and then now?
Uh, good question. I liked volleyball in grade school. I played basketball in grade school, never developed in anything that I wanted to do in high school. Played volleyball, obviously, in grade school, and I was I think it translates. I was a good setter, so I was good with my hands. I could, kind of run around the court, get people in position to score points. So jumped into volleyball, didn't really think anything of it, but then freshman year of high school, joined the St. X golf team. It was pretty competitive, so felt like it was a good opportunity to learn and play golf. So I was on the junior varsity team, and then sophomore year in the fall, I made varsity as a sophomore, which at the time was not as common, and it's still today. It was probably not as common. There's a lot of good young players that are able to do it, but they probably only take a handful of them each year. So once I did that, that kind of triggered me to not play volleyball my because in Cincinnati or in Ohio, it's a spring sport in high school for men's volleyball. So they were luckily off seasons, but I was like, if I want to take this a little more seriously, I need to spend my spring practicing, playing in some local GCGA events, which is our golf association, and just making sure that I was sharp for the coming seasons. And then just junior, senior year, just somehow got better each year. We had practice once a week, but it was more just self inducing on what do I want to do to be better, what events do I want to play in. So I have a twin brother too. I don't know if you know that, but he was always very, very good at golf in high school. He's still very good at today. So I had a competitive kind of person built into my life of sophomore year he was better at golf than I was in high school. So internally I was like, I need to be better than him, and worked really hard at it and just kept at it all those years.
So you have some high school success. I'm sure you had the normal college athlete story, right? You had great high school success. You become a full athlete scholarship. You get to start immediately. That was your experience, correct?
Good question, but no. Um, didn't really. I wanted to play college golf. I wanted to be because I knew that I was good enough to play somewhere, but didn't really get any looks because I wasn't very nationally recognized or even statewide recognized. I would say coming out of junior year, I would play good in these events for our school. I think I may have won a high school event or two or T1 my senior year, but after the state championship, we won. One of my close friends kind of told the University of Dayton golf coach, "Hey, this guy's pretty good." He happened to be on the team at the time too, as a junior going into a senior year, and I had taken a visit prior to Dayton, and I liked the school. I liked, it was an hour away from home. I had conversed with the coach at the time, but nothing really ever materialized. And that was October, probably the middle of October, we won state. And come Thanksgiving, a month later, I was offered a preferred walk on spot. So I took it. I said, I like the school. I might as well go for it. And the next fall, joined the team. And, it was the greatest decision I ever made. So it was really fun to play Dayton.
Yeah. And so here I'll assume again. So you're walk on. So you probably didn't do all that good at Dayton. You probably didn't get a lot of playing time. You probably didn't graduate with the scoring record. Am I right on that?
You're not right. Thanks for hyping me up, Hayden. Yeah. So I think freshman year, it's kind of hard to revisit it all, but I, got learning the ropes my fall of my freshman year. Similar situation of my senior year. I think I played in like an alternate event that was in the city of Dayton at Wright State's event. And I think, I think that was really it. Nothing really happened. I wasn't in the lineup, and frankly, wasn't good enough. I wasn't, didn't qualify and didn't, I wasn't able to show that I was good enough to play. I think we played maybe Ball State right before conference, and I was the 6-man because it was a 6-man event. So coach was like, "Hey, he's not going to play conference. Let's just see what he can do." And I think I did well in that event, or at least well for our team. I don't remember what position I was, but again, it was good to see what a college event was like. Very different, playing 36 holes and then jumping into an 18-hole day the next day and just getting used to traveling, rooming with somebody who's 2, 3 years older than with me. Because at the time there was no other people in my class. The class above me had 2 people, and I don't think at that time either of them were in the lineup. So there was a big age difference. But then sophomore year is when I started to play a lot better. Similar situation in the fall, though. We had a very, very good senior team that was experienced. I think all 5 of them were either seniors or 5th years, and they really were good. And I think towards the last 2 events, they kind of started to not play as great. There was a few scores and we did another qualifying round and ended up making the last 2 events of the spring. And then I don't believe I missed an event from there. Just kind of took that opportunity, showed that I was capable of beating, my teammates, because in college golf, that's kind of what you got to do. At Dayton, we weren't 12 people deep. We were probably like 6 or 7 people deep, with a lot of people learning the ropes, or, I think I'm comfortable saying there were role players as well. Just, they were on the team and they were getting there, and they were great people to lean on, to learn from, and, really compete with. But there was always like a 6 or 7 or 8 person lineup of who was going to get in, right? So from then on, it was just taking that opportunity and running with it. Had a great time my sophomore year, playing in events, playing a full 15, 16 rounds in the fall or the spring, and then playing the conference championship was cool. And, understanding that that's a little more high stakes environment. And then, yeah, junior, senior year was kind of the same thing. Played every event that I could. Played with a broken thumb my junior year for the fall. Still somehow played good golf. So I'm right-handed. It was my right thumb, so it was on top of the club. Played with 9 fingers. But ever since then, I think I started to realize that I was still getting better every year and not, plateauing. I was more learning new things, getting used to shooting even par almost every time I played golf. And stark contrast from today, I could just basically roll out of a van and shoot even par on a course I'd never seen, where today, I can still play very good golf, but at the same time, it's not as easy for me to just kind of roll out on the course and just, hit 12 fairways and 15 greens. So, yeah.
Yeah, that might be the most relatable thing right there. I'm sure you guys did the same thing. I used to go like full Caniac combo night before, wake up. It was like a Pop Tart for breakfast, 36 holes. It's like I was not doing myself any favors.
Same here. Yeah, it was bad.
So
Yeah,
I'm,
hey, go for it.
yeah, so I'm 0 for 2, but that's fine. That's all good. Dominic, I'll cap off your collegiate career with your senior year. You had a 73 stroke average, which, if you don't understand college golf, we play terrible conditions at times. We play unbelievably tough courses at times. The 73 average is very, very strong. You shot 65 in a tournament at one point, and you actually still hold the program record at 203 strokes for a 54-hole event. But COVID ended it all. 2-part question. Did losing that season make you hungrier for mid-am golf? But also, before that, what went into your decision on deciding to go into the work field instead of utilizing a COVID year?
Do you want me to answer that one first?
Yeah.
My now lovely wife would be the number one factor. At the time, she was a year ahead of me at Dayton, so she was already a year out. Very good about visiting each other. She would come back. She had a bunch of friends in our grade. Hayden's met her a few times as well. She's like a life of the party person, so always down for a good time. But when COVID happened, I'm at home in May or April, and NCAA came out with, hey, we're going to offer everyone, a COVID year for all the spring athletes. And I didn't really think anything of it, to be perfectly honest. But then, Gip, our coach, called me. He's like, not to be, needless to be say, you are welcome to come back. We would love for you to come back. And it did run through my head of, hey, do I go in? Because I think the transfer portal came out the year before too.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, do I put my name in there? Do I go, try to play at like an Ohio State or another and be their 4 or 5 guy? Because at that time, I felt like I was good enough from just a scoring average perspective. But then I kind of just sat back and said, hey, if I were to do that, there's really only one reason I would do that. It would be to probably try and turn pro and play golf, right? And I've never really had that inkling. I never thought I was good enough, to be perfectly honest. And it was never really something that I wanted to go grind on. That only got amplified when I met my girlfriend at the time. So we were like dating for 2 years, and I'll never forget it. And I mean it in a loving, positive way. But she was basically like, "If you go back to school, this thing's over." And I said, "Okay." So I guess I'm not going back to
Easy
school.
decision.
And then on top of that, I was already had 2 job offers at that time. I had accepted one of them at Fifth Third, and I even checked with Fifth Third, and they said, "Hey, can I delay my start date a year?" Because I was part of a training program that I do a couple different rotations throughout 2 years, and they agreed to let me do that based off the circumstances. So I did have it lined up if I wanted to, but it really came down to me and my girlfriend's at the time decision, and glad it all worked out. I thought at that time it was going to work out, so I kind of bet on the fact that this would be my future fiance and now wife. So um, I'm very happy with the decision. I truly mean it.
Well, clearly a lot's changed since college then. And speaking of like just golf wise, you had a practice facility, you had a schedule. We were talking earlier about like you had team drills and all this stuff, and that all goes away. And now you've got a job, and now you're married. What's the first thing you had to figure out when it came to keeping your game sharp post college?
First thing's just time, priorities, things like that. What are you going to do when it comes to um, your practice? What are you going to do to, prioritizing playing on the weekends? So when I first graduated, it was like I said, COVID, and I actually ironically still had an in-office job, but it was because of the thing that I was working on at Fifth Third could really only be taught in person. It would be like today you could probably do it with everyone being used to working on
Mm-hmm.
WebEx or Teams and things like that, but it was a new thing, right? At Fifth Third, I loved working there, but it was kind of, hey, this is a 5 day a week in the office job. You can work remote in special circumstances. Um, but I still went in, and it kind of sucked, to be honest, because it was like an 8 to 5, and everyone says 9 to 5. And it's really funny because I have a very different experience. Like I've always worked an 8 to 5. It's like you're there from 8 to 5. You're taking, you might take an hour lunch, you might not, you might work through it. But, you get off at 5 o'clock on Fridays, and it was either I'm going to Indianapolis to visit my girlfriend, she was living in Indianapolis, or I'm going to go home and hang out with friends. And then if I'm staying on the weekend, I'm probably going to play Saturday morning, and maybe play Sunday if I can make it happen too. So it was really that. But to be honest, like I didn't really play competitive golf for probably a year, and not by choice, just by circumstances, I would say. I played like like some local stuff, some USGA qualifiers, things like that. But I never, in the fall of that year, I played in, what year did I play in the floorball? 2021? Yeah. So in the fall, I played in the qualifier. I qualified for US four ball in the spring. So that was my first, like, well, shoot, now I got to go block off a week of my 3 weeks of vacation I get to go out to Chambers Bay and play in the four ball, which like, so that's like, that was probably the biggest thing too, of like, well, there goes a week of my entire year on vacation. Cause at that job at the time, it wasn't one of these situations I have now where it's a little bit more flexible.
So we talked kind of time management in general, right? Specifically, what does that look like on, now let's say you're going from 3 hours down to maybe you got an hour to practice. What was the first thing that got cut?
Putting, ironically, I've always been a good putter, thankfully, knock on wood. Um, if I, like I said, if I hit it, if I'm hitting it well, I'll go do a putting drill for a little bit. But honestly, I've always felt comfortable over a putter, and I've never had the Y word. I've never had, visually like what is happening in front of me. And I truly contributed over all these years. I just think I have a knack for reading greens, right? Because a lot of people are like, you got to marry the line and the speed. And I believe in that, but I'd more believe in the fact that you need to pick how hard you're going to hit a putt first before you pick your line. And that might not be a lot of way people think, but as Hayden could tell you, like I'm hitting it 2 feet by the hole almost on every single putt, unless it's one of those touchy downhill sliders that you really can't let get away from you. But I'm not afraid of a 2, 3, 4 footer coming back up the hill or down the hill, whatever it may be, versus leaving the putt short. So that was the first to go. I would tell you that hitting drivers was probably the second thing to go. Like I would hit if I had 4 good drivers in a row in a practice, it's like we're good. I'm not really about it. I've always been a good driver with the golf ball. I've always hit it relatively straight. I've never been the longest hitter, but as technology's gotten better, as I don't care as much, and we can get into that if you want to. Like I actually hit it farther than I did in college, and so that's been something that I don't really focus on as much, and it really just focused to let's become the best wedge player that I can be, because even in the mid-am game or even in the am game, like you're still going to have probably 6 wedges around, even at, I've played in the USAM and you're still having 6 wedges, right? You just got to pick those spots. And then from there, I've always been an okay mid-iron player. I actually switched to blades in my 7, 8, 9 iron after I graduated college. So I view it as like an extension of wedges. I just, for some reason, it's a lot easier for me to get comfortable hitting an 8 iron from 170 yards and making sure that, the goal is to hit this to 10 feet, right? You might not always do it, but if I have a sand wedge in my hand from 105 yards, my goal is to hit it inside 10 feet almost every single time. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen, but I've always felt comfortable there. But then it was more 4, 5, and 6 iron. I've never been a good long iron player. I'll never really claim to be one, but I just need to get better at it. So that's what I've been working on, or that's what I started to work on more out of college.
I want to go back to what you said about putting real quick. Was picking your speed first. So we were talking about, you playing a Saturday game with a bunch of different guys pretty consistently throughout the summer. If one of those guys came up to you in a similar situation where he's, working 9 to 5, doesn't have a ton of time, he goes, man, I heard what you said about picking your speed first. Where do I even start with that? Like, how do I discover what my speed is? What would be your response?
My response would be to go practice, funny enough. But I think it's more just like looking at each green you hit and each putt you have is like situational awareness and things of that nature, where you're looking at, if I hit this 2, 3 feet by, like what's my putt look like coming back? Or if I hit this, with not enough pace, is it just really never going to go in? Things like that. And I think those are what's more important for people, especially as you get shorter putts too, I would say. When you're 20 feet away, I'm still not, as focused on my speed, but I have a general idea of how far it needs to go. But when you're 5 feet and you're debating over half a ball out to the right or right edge, it's, to me, the obvious answer is just right edge firm, because, physics, like you're not hitting it that much softer by hitting it with a half a ball out. So you're probably hitting it like 3 rolls farther, half a foot, 6 inches, and you're eliminating a lot, assuming that you have a good stroke. So I think too often people like overread stuff, probably because they're trying to like marry the line and the speed and have it drip in the front edge or go in with perfect pace. But to me, the hole's round, so I'd rather hit it firm. And it's worked out well for me. I mean, it'll bite you sometimes, right? If you go play fast greens, you got to kind of adjust that. But even then, you play fast greens, I think line becomes even more dependent, right? Because people are used to playing 9, 10, 10 and a half on a stip meter. You play 13s, you actually have to start aiming more outside the hole, because it's like you're putting on an ice rink and it's going to slide off easier. So it's just something that I think's always given me, maybe not a leg up, but just more of a confidence thing. And hey, I have the right speed here. I just got to make sure I read it correctly. And as long as I do that, I'll make the putt. Where the opposite of that would be, hey, I have the right line. I just got to now make sure I hit it the perfect amount of speed for that line. And it's counterintuitive, but I encourage people to give it a try one time and see what it does for them.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I think that's very interesting. Let's jump into. I know it's disgusting. Hayden's got the warm weather down there south. It's disgusting in Ohio right now.
Yeah.
So let's move forward to warmer times. We've got a tournament circled on the schedule. Let's say USAM, for example, qualify for the USAM. We've got 2 weeks before. What does that 2-week block look like before a kind of red circle on the calendar?
That's probably when I would go back and focus on the fundamentals of putting and chipping and making sure the grip feels comfortable, wedges feel good. At a tournament like that where it's going to be tricky, I would say more focus on the ability to flight irons and flight wedges, because that's probably going to matter more. I think at our level of golf, especially with some of these guys I've met in the mid-end game, like we can all still hit very good shots. We're all probably +4 to 6 to 7 handicaps, or +3 to 7 handicaps. So we're all very good, right? But it's a matter of, can you hit the type of shot you need when the conditions are the toughest, or you're at a bad angle and things like that. But try not to overthink it. Really, honestly, it's kind of like I played in, I don't want to drift too far off your questions, but like when I played in my first USAM in 2022, I played a practice round. Ironically, I signed up. I didn't know anybody there. My brother came with me to caddy. I signed up for a practice round by myself. I was like, whoever joins will join, and I end up playing with Carl Phillips, Michael Thornbornson, and Ben James, who
That's
is
sick.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I didn't really know. Like I knew who they were, but I was like, then I looked them up. I'm like, oh, these are like 3 of the top 20 AMs in the world. 2 of them became number 1 AM in the world. 2 of them have PGA Tour cards now. The other one's gonna have a PGA Tour card. So, but it was a cool 18 holes to say, like, what do these guys do that I don't do? Well, the first thing is they hit it farther than I do, but that's not that hard to imagine, right? It's like they're probably 20 yards by me, I would say, because when it's that firm, my ball's rolling, and I don't want to always go back to playing with Hayden, but Hayden knows, like, I hit kind of like a flat cut, pretty flat ball. It probably carries 280 yards and rolls 30 yards. So I'm hitting 300 yards as long as we're not playing in wet conditions. So that's not really my problem, but they're really, really farther than me. And then the ability that they have to chip a golf ball is crazy. Like stuff I've never really seen, and it's not anything special, right? It's just, hey, if you had this chip, it'd be hard for me to hit it inside probably 10 feet, and they're hitting it inside 3 feet, right? So it's just that, and them understanding like the difference, bounces, grooves, lies, angles, all the above. And maybe for them it could just be as simple as, I'm just good at this and I like kind of feel it out, right? For some of it might be technical. I didn't really dive into the questions with them, but those were the 2 biggest things I noticed. So when it comes to like the practicing, I knew that I was good enough to hit shots, and I played good. I think I missed the cut by 3 or 4 strokes, but I made the turn, and I asked my brother, like, where are we at? And I was on the cut line. So I'm like, well, I'm 24. I don't play golf more than probably once or maybe once and a half a week with 9 holes in there. And I'm in the USAM and I'm like T65 right now at 5 over par through 27 holes. Like, I'm good enough to like make the cut at the USAM. I didn't get it done, but that was a really good confidence boost for me, and understanding that, in preparation, like you asked, for these events, I don't really have to do that much different, right? It's more just kind of setting expectations. It's making sure the fundamentals are good, because I've gone into tournaments where the fundamentals aren't good, and then that's what bites you in the butt when you're trying to score.
So turning it back on other people who are in your position, they work a 40+ hour work week, they play a couple times a month. What do you feel like they're getting wrong in their practice?
Well, I don't want to say anyone get anything wrong, but it's more like a lot of it is probably more like mental preparation too, and just understanding stuff like that. I've probably more leaned into that than anything now, and just in our mid-am golf, it's very, very hard sometimes to turn your brain off from work, or maybe, you have an emergency call on the range before your round. Like last year at state mid-am, I'm like, in the last group, it's like 45 minutes to I tee off. Someone calls me and I'm like, well, I kind of got to answer this. So, because to be frank, I only put in a half day of work, because I was teeing off at 1:30. So I'm like, I'm just going to put in from 12 to 5 because I still worked all morning. And,
we had very different tee times that day, by
yeah,
the way. I think I was second off that morning.
yeah. So whatever I teed off, it might have been like 11, whatever. I still worked a half day, but I'm like answering the call, and I kind of step on the first tee, and I don't really feel like prepared. But I think it's hit the fairway, hit the green, two putt, move on to the second hole. So like things like that and when I say mental prep, it's like things like that. In working a full day, you can't expect to go out there and shoot a 65 every round, especially when conditions are hard, right? So it's more like knowing the audience that you're with. In a state mid-am in Ohio, the fields are pretty good, but you don't have to go shoot 62 to win, because thankfully the Ohio Golf Association puts these events at very strong golf courses in the mid-am game. So, we're not playing some of the courses like we played in college, right? Where 65, 66, 68's winning the event. It's more like you shoot even par, you're probably finishing the top five. So it's kind of like that, prepping for the event, not prepping for your golf swing. Um, is probably one thing that I would say a lot of people would get wrong, if anything. And then that goes into your practice, right? So then you're over preparing for maybe, you know, hitting a bunch of drivers, where like at Brookside in Columbus, where like you don't have to hit a ton of drivers. It's not that long of a golf course. So you can hit drivers if you want to just bang it down there. But there's a driver at 290 on every single hole. So if you're not comfortable with a tee shot, just hit a 5 wood, 3 wood, 3 iron, whatever it may be. So that would be the thing that I think people get, quote unquote, wrong, is like prepping for a swing versus the event that you're going to play in.
Moving from kind of Ohio level, like you said, strong fields, really good events. OGA picks great courses. You've also played a lot of national level events, like we've talked about, Carlton Woods, US Mid-Am, USAM. What's the biggest difference between competing at the Ohio level? Well, I'll even back it all the way up. What's the difference between competing for your club championship at the state level and then at the national level?
The club championship involves a couple more beverages, I would say. And thankfully, I have two of my best friends that belong at Coldstream, and they're just as good a golf as I am. Whether they admit that or not, they can beat me on any given day, and so that's more like fun. So I've played in it twice. I won one year, beat who was the best man in my wedding, and then no, I didn't beat him. He beat me. Tough. I beat another player at the club who was very good, and then this past year I played him. He was the best man winning, and he beat me. And it's like I'm happy for him, right? Because we're riding the same cart, we're sharing cocktails at the turn, we got all the friends watching us. So competing there is not really, it's still fun to be in that competitive environment, but it's not anything that makes me super nervous or worried about, because at the end of the day, it's still something that I love to do, and I'd like to see other people win too, especially at our own club. Going to the state level, I would say when I started playing at the state level, it was pretty intimidating, because it was kind of like, there's a bunch of good names in front of me, right? You got Andrew Bailey, Bill Williamson, Scott Anderson, a bunch of guys out of Columbus, a bunch of guys out of Cleveland, you name them. They're all very, very good golfers, and they could win on any event that we play. You know, so it was kind of worrisome at first, but then after that first state mid-am, I kind of was like, okay, I've identified myself as somebody who's probably a top mid-am in the state. I think I solidified that with the win, obviously, in 2024. Backed it up with the third last year. So now I'm way more comfortable in the state level. I feel like I can walk into a state mid-am or even a state am. I played that last year as well, and that's the only time where at a state level I'm playing. I'm playing at where was it last year? Lancaster Country Club or Lancaster. I don't know how you pronounce it in Ohio. And I'm playing with 17-year-olds. I'm like, I am a decade older than these people. And, they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I work every single day. And I'm like, what do you do? They're like, oh, we're going to, whatever school for college. And I was like, good for you guys. So, it's fun to play with them because they ask you some good questions to give them advice. So, but it's still, I like to test myself at the state AM because it's your state AM. It's a WAGR ranked event. It is, you can, if you win, you get to go play in the USAM, things like that. So depending on location, course, whatever else is going on, I'll always make an effort to be there. But from that state level, I'm getting way more comfortable too. And so from a national level, it was pretty, first one was down in Houston at the Carlton Woods. Will always have a special place in my heart. Went down, by myself. Didn't know a single person there. Showed up and, somehow made it in the final group. I really liked that golf course and ended up finishing second, losing by a stroke. So that was another kind of building on the confidence of, okay, I can go down there. There's a lot of good players in the field. I've never played golf in Texas before. And, somehow I just trusted my game and knew that I had done the right things to get there. So I'm still getting used to that national level. I would say I play a pretty good schedule for the most part. It gets really tough with work and other things, but have some fun ones lined up this year. So hoping to have a good 2026.
So if for the listeners, if you've never played golf or seen Domenic play golf, he very unapologetically plays his own game. And you've obviously, as you've been telling us, have played with guys who are now on the PGA Tour or about to be on the PGA Tour. And you could have very easily fallen into the trap of, oh, I want to play their game. I want to do what they're doing. What advice would you give to someone who is in that boat where they want to say, I want to play someone else's game. I want to do what they want to do, where you very unapologetically always play your own game?
Great question. I would say just do what's gotten you where you continue to do what you've done that's gotten you where you are, right? So I think if you're looking to go to another level, that's when you need to have the conversation of, what am I not doing, or what do I need to work on specifically to increase my strokes gained, increase my my number of putts, or decrease my number of putts per round, or my fairways per round, greens per round, whatever that is for you, however you like to track that. I think that's still a healthy attitude, right? If you are clearly bad at chipping, then you need to go learn how to chip from somebody who's good at chipping, and what are they doing, right? But if you're not bad at chipping and you feel confident in your chipping, then, and you've gotten to a level where you're playing high level events, there's no reason to change it, right? I think it's very easy to look at other people's golf swings, look at other people's clubs, look at, swing tips they're working on that have allowed them to open up a new shot. But the older I've gotten, it's more just basically, hey, we're going to try to never hit a golf ball left. And we're going to, hit it as low as I can given the firmness of the greens. And I've really leaned into that, and it's treated me well. So I get in trouble sometimes when it's firm out. I got to kind of adjust. But outside of that, I just try to stick with what I have because I know that I can rely on it when times get really, really stressful, or times get very, very, nervous in an event.
Well, Domenic, thank you for your time again today. I'll finish up with one quick question and we'll wrap. It's been a decade since your freshman year ish. What would today Domenic tell freshman year of college Domenic?
Probably to lose some weight would be the first one. Today, just to keep believing in yourself and do what you feels right. I would say I never really I've been a very confident person probably my whole life. Ironically, the one place I don't get as confident is in some of those scenarios I just talked about. But the earlier that you remember kind of who you are, why you do things, the work you put in, as long as you're comfortable with that and you can sleep at night, I don't really think that you need to explain that to anyone else. I think in freshman year in college can be a very formidable time for people. So just remembering that in a decade, no one's going to remember who you are really. And just telling yourself, hey, today my friend group is a lot probably smaller than it was back then, right? Because I don't really, I care about the people I care about, and I do the things that I want to do, and I don't feel like I need to explain that to anyone. I'm happy to talk about it at any time, but it's a healthy attitude in life, I would say. So it doesn't just translate to the golf course of, hey, I practice the way that I want to practice, or I have these clubs because I want to play these clubs. It's more like, hey, I just do what I do because it's what I'm confident in and what I like to do.
That's awesome. Well, Dom, what's the next thing you have circled on your calendar, and where can people follow you?
First event is May 1st. It's called the Giles Invitational at Kinloch out in Virginia, where they held the 24 U.S. Mid-Am. Fortunate enough to get an invite this year after playing the U.S. Mid-Am there, so really looking forward to that. It's probably one of the coolest properties I've ever been on. So I played well there, so hopefully that kind of happens again. And we'll be prepping. Started picking up the clubs a couple weeks ago, and we'll be prepping over the next 2 months to get out there. And then they follow me on Instagram, I guess. Yeah, D Maricocchi, my last name. That's about the only social media platform I post or use regularly, I would say.
Well, we'll plug that down below. I guess it would be 2 weeks ago now. Christian Brand was on. We plugged his State Farm agency. I don't know if you want to plug your bank.
Yeah, if you're looking for a commercial real estate loan in Michigan or Ohio, I'm your guy. I work for, just to plug them too. I couldn't do this stuff without them, and my wife too is just so encouraging with some of this stuff and making sure that I take the time out of my busy schedule to do the things that I like to do, and then work is very, very fortunate to let me, use the PTO days we have. We have a lot, but they understand that this is one of my passions, so they understand that there might be some days I'm working half days, but Commercial Alliance has been very, very good to me as well.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again, Dom. Appreciate you, and we will see you guys next week.
Thanks, Dom.
Yeah, thank you.